Thank you, Acting President. And I also rise to speak on this motion to form an inquiry into, among other things, the redevelopment of the 44 public housing high-rise buildings by 2051, brought forward by the Greens. Now, I will not be supporting this motion for a number of reasons. The first reason is I don't really take what the Greens say about housing seriously. There are so many instances of the Greens in councils and in other places that oppose housing at every opportunity. Well, I can give you an example. Steph Hodgins-May, when in the campaign for McNamara, the headline campaign was to oppose a development of housing towers. No, she was a candidate running to say, I will stop housing being built. That was the platform that they were running on. This is the campaign poster that they were using on social media.
Order. Mr. Limbrick.
Thank you. So I don't buy it. And secondly, as a great economist once said, you must judge policy not by its intention, but by its consequences. And many of the things proposed in this place by the Greens, like rental caps, price controls again, we're talking about price controls, result in disastrous consequences. And whether or not the Greens believe that these consequences will happen or not is like believing whether or not gravity exists. This is just defies the laws of economics. Now, on another matter, when we're talking about housing and human rights, firstly, I would state that in the Charter of Human Rights in Victoria, although I've got many problems with the Charter in Victoria, one of the things, yes, I've spoken about the Charter many times, and I'm sure the members of the government are sick of hearing me talk about the Charter. But one of the things that the Charter does get right is it focuses on negative rights. So it focuses on restrictions of what the government can do rather than things that the government should be compelled to do, which is a very wise thing, which was also taken into account in the American Constitution and the American Bill of Rights. But human rights and housing towers. In the last term of Parliament, I seem to recall there were some very big issues around human rights and the housing towers. And in fact, during one of the lockdowns in the housing tower, this abysmal and dark episode in Victoria's history, one that was confirmed by the Ombudsman as a gross breach of human rights, what happened during that point in time at the housing tower is people were locked in their homes, they weren't allowed outside to get fresh air and exercise, they were given culturally inappropriate food, all sorts of horrible things that happened. And what was the Greens' response when the government came back and wanted to extend the emergency powers? The emergency powers, the Greens came back and green-lighted. They didn't say, well, maybe the government might have abused human rights and did awful things in the housing towers. No, they didn't do any of that. They just went ahead and green-lighted the government to keep going with the emergency powers. And at the time, if I can jog this Parliament's memory, I tried to insert an amendment into the Public Health and Wellbeing Act, which was recommendation 2 of the Ombudsman's report, and she recommended that the Public Health and Wellbeing Act should be amended to allow fresh air and exercise to anyone detained under the Public Health and Wellbeing Act, in line with common prisoners, because prisoners get better rights than people detained under the Public Health and Wellbeing Act. In fact, the Ombudsman thought it was so important that the term fresh air can be found over 90 times in the report, right? This was a big deal. And when I put forward this amendment, the Greens voted against fresh air and exercise for people detained in public housing towers that might have been detained again if there had been another lockdown in the towers. Thankfully, that didn't happen, but the Greens voted against fresh air and exercise as a human right. So I won't be lectured on human rights by the Greens, and I won't be supporting this political agenda here. That's all I have to say on this.
Being a Libertarian is sometimes described as like being the only sober person in the car and no one will let you drive. The government is driving us into the dark.